We are live for another AI Revolution call. Today we are joined by True Artificial Intelligence, Jim Cody Willard. That's his name.
Jim, huh?
Yeah. I learned on TV a long time ago that you can't go wrong putting puppies or kids on the screen.
Cool.
Yeah. So Jim was in Bryce's way, so I thought I'd at least give him a cameo. There you go, Jimmo.
How old is Jim?
3 months.
Yeah,
Golden
puppies,
retriever.
puppies especially. Yeah.
So true puppy. All right, but now let's hop in, talk some actual AI revolution stuff. John, we haven't seen you in 3 or 4 weeks.
Maybe 3. I don't know.
3?
Bryce and I saw each other
All right, that's good.
2 weeks ago.
What's the latest and greatest in the news on AI? And then I've got, as always, a couple of more questions down in the weeds.
Yeah. So I'm the one usually saying, no, it's not slowing down. But it's slowing down. No, there's still stuff happening for sure. Let's see a couple things. Google took over the top spot for open source model. So they, Meta was kind of having the top model there with Llama 3. And now Gemma has a version that's not only outperforming Llama, it's about 1/3 or less the size.
John, can you let's stop there for a moment. Can you break down what we mean by open source AI model? I mean, I think I know, but I would like to hear it from you, and I'm sure anybody watching would actually like to know that. So when we say open source AI, what do we mean?
Well, there's a little bit of a spectrum there about like there's really open and then there's somewhat open. The difference is really open means they've given not just here's a model you can use and do what you want, but they've given the actual data of the weights that are in the model. And it's you can look right into it and do stuff to it and know what you're working with, that kind of thing. So when it's really open, a model is handed over like open source software for all these years, which some people are like, well, what's the big deal? It's not the real thing. The commercial stuff is where the real interesting, things are happening. I'll just go to the software side of that for a split second here and say that, think about Linux. It is on the desktop, maybe not that interesting. There's a couple people on the edge will use it or whatever, but it runs the world. Like computer
data centers.
On data centers, on the server side of things, AWS or
I think like we probably need to explain. Linux is an operating system that competes against Mac OS or Windows.
Right. It's a operating system. It's the kind of fundamental software on a computer that all the other software needs that software to be there in order to run things. Programs don't just go, hey, computer, do this. They say, hey, operating system, can you ask the computer to do this? So they're this in-between layer, and the super important. And it just so happens that if you get away from your desktop and go up to the data centers, open source is hugely important.
It doesn't just so happen, though. It's an economics, right? I mean, if you are a computer company savvy enough to be building a data center that you're going to be renting out, letting software as a service, whatever you're doing with that data center, if you're sophisticated enough technology company to build a data center, you can do it on Linux for almost free because it's open source. If you want to do a Windows data center, it's going to cost you millions of dollars for a real data center, and nobody builds a Mac OS data center.
Right. And there's other advantages, even if it costs money, where because it's open, it's actually a lot safer to have the software out in front of everybody and say, anyone can look at how this software works. So the bad guys can, but so can the good guys. And so everything about protecting it is like, if there's anything that's kind of a vulnerability to it, it's going to be found. It's not just up to that one company that puts out that operating system to find it. Instead, it's up to, you know, a million developers to find it. So there are advantages all around. Now back to the
But so back to the AI open source. Now, if I were to say, hey, I'm going to use OpenAI's API, application programming interface. So when I build my website that has the ability for people to talk about Tesla on it, I can load up all of my writings about Tesla. I can tell OpenAI ChatGPT to use all public information it knows about Tesla to provide that service. How is that not open source?
Well, it's open access. So you don't get to see the OpenAI model. And
what do you mean by model? Explain that. What do you mean? A large language model, yes, but what do you mean?
Well, like a model is a bit of a difficult thing to explain. I've been trying to, and I think I settled on something here. A model is like a function. That means you put something in and something comes out. But it's a function that's almost entirely data. So you'll have this 80 gigabytes of like just numbers, just like you wouldn't even be able to read it. It's just that those are the numbers that make up what they call the weights. If you were looking inside the language model or the machine learning model, all of the stuff between every line that goes from here to there, whatever, is this big long number. It doesn't look like it means anything, but it's what got all of the, like with the Tesla car, the millions of miles of driving and all the videos, the computer's kind of watching those videos over and over, and as a result, it's setting the weights which are those numbers. It's adjusting those numbers until they behave a certain way, like they behave like version 12.4, which is they like drive like really well. And there's code as well that operates on those numbers, but this is the thing: the code is like 500 lines. It's not there's no kind of innovation in a way in the code. The code is just
let's use that Tesla example. So then if Tesla were to license full self-driving technology to Ford electric vehicles, Ford would have open access to that suite of software that then makes their cars behave like Tesla cars would, but they would never have access to the open source technology, machine learning, data, all of the stuff that the Dojo computer at Tesla has learned in order to run the full self-driving suite.
Yeah, I mean, probably that's Tesla's choice about how far to go. And you're right that probably in that case they wouldn't go further than that, but others do. Like, and just to give the example of Meta from Llama from Meta, they say here's the model along with all the numbers, and more it's like along with all of, we're telling you what data went into it, that kind of thing. And then
So then walk me through, what does a company who wants to be an AI do with the Llama model does the Llama and or the Google open source version of Gemini, if you're an AI company, then are you able to create your own AI software built upon that open source LLM?
Yes. So remember that.
And how would that differ from just plugging in an API?
Right. So when you plug in an API, you're working with a model that's already gone through all its stages. Remember, we've talked about those stages. You remember you've talked about RLHF, which is kind of reinforcement learning from human feedback. It's like, so it's a stage. And if you're using something like an OpenAI, it's gone through that stage. And that stage is, a large part of how well the thing kind of performs, and does. When you get something open source, you can say, I'm going to put it through that stage. I'm going to take the weights that were given raw from the pre-training phase, and then I'm going to do that stage. So you're kind of like getting a car that doesn't have the paint job yet, and you're getting to choose what tires to put on it and what kind of struts, and it's like you're finishing it out in really an important way.
Walk me through what would a finished product built upon an open source AI LLM entail? What would that product be? How would I ever interface with that 3 years from now or 5 years from now?
You interact with it, you interface with it the same way. I mean, I use these open source models in my work, and funny enough, we use an API called OpenAI, which I think is from OpenAI. So there's the code that helps you get at the model. These other models, they go ahead and use the same code. They're like, it doesn't matter, we'll just use that. So when you're doing stuff like saying, here's a prompt, tell me back the result, you're using the same code.
So John, the reason you would use open source instead of just OpenAI's standard API, application interface, that you would interact with to create your product, you're trying to refine the model more specifically towards what?
Toward a vertical, toward banking, toward medicine, toward investing, where OpenAI is made for fairly general purpose. And so there's a couple of pieces you get to kind of, work with here when you're using these AIs in business, which is where there's a lot of opportunity.
Is it possible that there will be these verticalized AI models that you won't actually, that the generalized will be beaten by verticals, or are the general AIs going to get so good and have so much compute behind them that they'll be able to beat the verticals?
It depends on whether the foundation ones, the OpenAIs and Anthropics of the world, continue to do what they've been doing, which is releasing APIs for what they do and so forth. And so because the verticalization can happen either onto open source stuff or just using an API on OpenAI and just doing other things to, fine tuning or retrieval augmented generation or agent things, agent frameworks where you got multiple AIs kind of working together. So there's multiple ways for the aftermarket, to do interesting and useful things. And it's going to be, well, if that original supplier decides we're not giving out anything anymore, but that doesn't work to their advantage. So I think that you'll continue to have, it's best for the ecosystem to have both.
My last question, and then I'm sure Bryce has some questions or thoughts he'd like to throw out here too, but talk about how Apple then, why wouldn't Apple go to an open source AI and throw billions of dollars worth of engineers and compute and everything at it to have their own better version, specialized version built on their data, instead of partnering, as it appears to be, at least right now? You can correct me on any of this if I'm wrong, but it looks like Apple's just partnering with OpenAI and is going to sort of put OpenAI functionality, generalized functionality into Siri.
I think it's a little different than that. I think that what they're doing, and they may adjust, but what their strategy looks like now, and it's an interesting one, they are looking to have a small model of their own that is local to the machine, so that the kind of privacy is as much as possible happening just even like right on the machine without even leaving the machine. And then when it does leave the machine, it's going to have an opt-in for like, oh, we want to go. It looks like the question you're asking involves more. Can we ask ChatGPT kind of thing, and to have more of a cloud of models, not just OpenAI, but open source models as well, where they kind of are playing the mutual fund approach. Like, we're not going to go and lock ourselves in. It's too risky, given who they are, for them to, tie on to one particular model or one supplier and say, we're tying our fortunes to these folks. Instead, they're like, you can use whichever of these. We're going to set ourselves up so that we're a different additional aspect of what matters, of how the whole stuff gets used together.
I'll ask you, do you think the Department of Justice, the regulators would crack down? Why wouldn't Apple just go offer $100 billion for Anthropic tomorrow?
Ego.
What?
Ego. Those folks.
Who's ego? It's not like, Tim Cook certainly got an ego, but I think I miss Steve Jobs. Don't get me wrong, but Tim
I'm
Cook
sorry. I meant OpenAI.
His ego's not driving the ship over there at Apple. Why?
No, I meant OpenAI ego. I thought you were talking about OpenAI grabbing it.
No, Anthropic. Why wouldn't? I don't think Apple could buy. I don't think OpenAI and Sam Altman would sell. But I would imagine if Apple knocked on Anthropic's door and said, we will give you 3% of our outstanding shares, which equals $100 billion. Anthropic just raised money at like a $35 billion valuation.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
No,
okay, 150, 6%, 200
I was
billion.
talking about the other leg of that triangle was OpenAI to Anthropic. So like if OpenAI goes, we're going to swallow Anthropic because they look like they're catching up or whatever. You're talking about Apple to Anthropic. So who invests?
Why wouldn't Apple buy Anthropic for $200 billion?
Who invests in Anthropic today? Is it Amazon?
Google and Amazon both have invested in Anthropic.
Yeah. So so far they're getting the money they need, right?
Right, but I'm saying if Apple came, why wouldn't Apple just subsume all of it would solve. What you just said is what made me think of it. You're like, because it's Apple, they do not want to get locked into one of the other AI providers.
Yeah.
But Apple could be, if Anthropic is catching OpenAI, which is debatable, but as a user, Bryce is pretty sure it's catching OpenAI.
It's past them right now. Currently they leapfrogged them. They've got the best model at the moment.
So why not just Apple could win the AI war by just buying the best AI company?
Yeah. Well, say you buy it, and now you're in the business of having to rely on that model being the best, remaining the best, et cetera. You're like, we're not Apple, we're Apple Anthropic, because whether we're good or not depends on whether Anthropic is good or not. Today, they're like, doesn't matter. Whoever they are, we're Apple. And we're going to stay being Apple.
I just added that. I think it goes back to your point that you've been making, that the LMs are going to be commoditized anyways and are working their way towards that. So I don't know if you want to go pay a big multiple for what's going to be a commodity.
Yeah, I don't know about, honestly, it's a good
I don't know. I feel like I've gotten ahead of, I'm leaning over my skis on the LLMs are getting commoditized thought. I think we're at a snapshot in time. We're a year and a half into what will be a 30-year AI revolution. And it looks like those LLMs, from Anthropic to Gemini to Llama to OpenAI to Grok, just constantly new, just as good, or all at least in the same league of these AI LLMs. And the biggest concern for all of these Mag 7s that are building what look like very similar models of AI businesses is that they spend $100 billion building these AIs that they think are going to be, used by S&P 500 companies and consumers and small businesses and everyone else, but that they are all they're all too similar, and the margins, it's a race to zero on the margin.
Yeah. So here's what I think about it. You have this leapfrogging going on right now. They're very similar. OpenAI was here. Now Anthropic is above them. Then OpenAI is going to be above them. But there's also an acceleration happening where toward, whether you call it AGI or, but as you get closer and closer to the asymptote there of saying now somebody comes out with a model that is scary intelligent, there's less time for someone else. It can still happen. I don't think there's necessarily like there's one model to rule them all. But when a model comes out that's so good and so scary that somebody else better come out with one in very short time frame, or else they're out. So that's where the bet is played, and where the land grab is played. And there's we see the land grab also just to do with things like compute, and even with electric power. There's only so much of it to go around. I'm going to go buy out all the contracts on electricity from this whole end of things. It's like what Micron did in Syracuse. They're like, we've got water and we've got electricity. Let's throw $100 billion into central New York, because it's hard to find any place that has just the raw infrastructure kind of thing.
Just buy the Bitcoin miners.
Yeah.
Joke. It was a joke. Bryce, thoughts, comments, questions?
Can you talk a little bit about like parameter count, what it is and why it's important, and the rate at which parameter count is growing?
Set the stage here. So Elon tweeted today.
Elon tweeted that their next, so they're rolling out 12.4.2, but then their next iteration will be 5 times greater, utilize 5 times greater parameters. And so he said it will be tough to even fit it onto the existing FSD hardware. So explain what that is and why that would be hard to put on a legacy chip.
Well, parameters is like 1 for 1 equal to what I was calling weights, like when they say open weights. Okay. Yeah. So each of if you look at, if you can visualize a machine learning model, a language model, any of these things as being like these little circles, which are the nodes in the network, and then lines connecting those circles. Everyone's probably seen this, lines all come out to the circles and then go across to the next layer of circles, and layer. Every time there's a line connecting a circle from one level to the other, that's a parameter, and that's a weight, I should say. The parameters actually are across on the way in, so they're not exactly the same. It's very, very.
I literally wrote parameters equals weights parentheses sort of.
Yeah, that's fine. So, like I said, I'm not a machine learning engineer, even though I play one on TV. I just work with the stuff. Like it's like I'm a driver, not like a car engineer. But I can say that it's funny about parameters. You hear the bigger and bigger numbers, and when they're bigger, there's something sort of predictably better about that on the way up. But then when you get to a certain point, let's say I go, we just have the 7 billion parameter this, and the 80 billion parameter that, 200 billion parameter that. Then in the next generation, somebody will come out with something smaller, like less parameters, that is as powerful as the last one that had more parameters. So there's a thing going on where it gets bigger and it's better, and then it gets smaller and it's better because it's
more efficient,
because it's the same but smaller. And the reason it's better when it's smaller is like you just said, it won't even fit. As when it's bigger, it won't even fit on the machine, kind of thing.
So what's the ultimate measure then of the quality of the model? If because it's not necessarily parameter count, that can go down and get better. So what are the key benchmarks that we should be watching?
So it depends on the kind of thing, right? So if you're talking Tesla self-driving, it's that you don't get in an accident. But if you, it's different set of benchmarks there than, and really though, it is something like, how many million miles without an issue, or how many issues per million miles or something, incidents, but on open source model or those other kind of models, they go and run these benchmarks or tests where they're like giving it a test. They're saying, here's a bunch of questions to answer that we already know the answers, and we know that it's a really hard test. It's like the SATs, and no one's ever gotten it all the way. And the models are getting a little better
Yeah.
within, and there's about 8 different ones. There's ones that have to do with coding and with language and with other kinds of things.
Robotics revolution. How many, like, same sort of concept? Walk me through sort of how it open source models from maybe NVIDIA someday, like even that. So can you walk? NVIDIA has got software and chips to start making robots, but those robots are going to need AI LLMs to sort of interact. So
yeah, so like one thing is, back when Intel was like a powerhouse, I'm thinking all the way back to when
25 years ago.
Yeah, so like think of them compared to Motorola, going way back. I was doing some assembly level programming where you're actually like the code is as close to the chip as it could be, and like everybody in those days thought the Motorola has so much nicer instruction set. It's like down at the low level working with it, it's better. But Intel had better overall developer software toolkit kind of thing. And so they blew away Motorola. And then
Motorola had a CPU back in the late 90s, CPU business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you've heard of them, right?
Well, I've heard of Motorola. I never realized they.
Oh no, I thought you were making a joke, and I thought you said Intel. But yes, they had Apple ran on the first Macintosh was on a Motorola chip, I think, a 68030. But
stating the model.
Well, yeah, because I had to write code for it. But it's like I'm saying there are things that matter more than the hardware, and so take NVIDIA and their latest processor, which is what, $40,000. Who ever heard of a processor for $40,000? It's just crazy. Anyway, it's that.
Hold on just a second, John. I got a phone call on my Motorola.
Yeah.
Hello? Hold on, I got to send a text.
Yeah, if you press 111-22-8888, like, because it's how many times?
Hey, oh shoot, I hit the wrong button. Back.
Yeah, we had to start somewhere. So
yeah.
I kind of miss the antenna. I think pulling out the antenna is
broke.
It's a satisfying feeling.
I forgot about the antenna.
Oh, I wish you're right. You're totally right. Even at your home when you had the.
No,
hello?
But you guys, what was really high tech was when pagers went from just putting a phone number on them to actually showing text on them.
Yeah.
That was crazy.
Yeah. And then your phone became a pager.
That's right.
Text message.
Essentially it remained that way ever since, because if you think of texting,
I do think it's funny. I just got the new Ultra 2 Apple Watch, and my wife was like, "Hey, turn on the walkie-talkie feature." I'm like, really? Really?
What she talks like? Does she know that's your impersonation of her?
What did I do? I didn't even know how I did it.
It's pretty bad. Hey, the walkie-talkie version.
Put on the walkie-talkie. No, honey, put on the walkie-talkie.
So can somebody check the time? This is the minute within the call where we got really goofy.
It's literally every time we get to 30 minutes, that's about the end of the call, and we get goofy. So, and plus, I walked off and got the Motorola phone.
I don't know. Bryce and I have been doing hour calls because it just was too much to say. But
you guys Bryce also can't write an article with less than 2,800 words in it.
Fewer than. But anyway, so I have a shirt that says, I am
well done.
It says,
both of our parents, John's father, my mother, were English teachers. So.
Yeah, and I was given a T-shirt that says, "I'm silently correcting your grammar." But
yeah, me and John both had.
John and I
know. I did
he knows he's trying to do that on purpose.
I was trying to get John to correct me. Okay. Thank you for correcting me. Someone needed to correct me. Me and John. I will tell you, no offense. I hope my wife is not going to watch this video, but she does say me and so, and then goes on. And about 1 out of 100, I'm like, you mean John and I? Because I don't really need to correct your wife very often.
No, you really don't.
Marriage tip: don't correct your wife's grammar very often. Also, what my wife does is and this is a family trait. If you don't say the exact right word that you should have for that specific thing, I'm going to call you out on it. And the other day I said something that wasn't exactly right. And my wife called me out and I'm like, that's same difference. And oh man, she was like, duly noted. We don't have to be specific ever again. If you know what I mean, it's good enough.
Yeah.
When will we get to the point when robots are doing the correcting at that kind of level, or knowing when to be sarcastic or so forth? And that comes with the whole, like, because already, so
I was going to say Grok is almost there.
Look at my subtle kind of shift back here, but the AI chat side of it, when the voice thing finally comes out, which is now going to be 3 months later than it was supposed to be, we'll see when it actually comes out, is able to do sarcasm and different voices and accents and talk at the normal
John,
rate.
you just finished that sentence with a preposition. When out that model comes is how you should have said that.
No, it's ending us. There's a famous line from Winston Churchill: ending a sentence with a preposition is a most ridiculous form of pedantry, up with which I will not put. So
well done. I was just waiting, obviously, for any moment at which I might be able to correct John's English.
Yeah.
All right, John, last thoughts. Bryce, last thoughts. I'm not here for an hour.
Okay, so let me tell you that a lot's been happening in AI, well, in high tech, with medicine and biotech and so forth. This past week, Ray Kurzweil was talking again about, people will live to 1,000 because we'll have nano robots in the body correcting things. Well, it was today, a story came out of a medical research team that is successfully fighting cancer in mice with nanorobots. They call them origami robots. They go in, they find a certain pH level that is a cancer cell, and it goes and open up around that cell and disperses the stuff that would otherwise kind of be poison to your body right to that cell. And it's the size of nanometers, and it's built out of DNA. And so some stuff is coming in that regard.
Wow.
So, John, who's going to make that drug, that nanobot?
Yeah, I don't know. He's thinking as the investor here. He's like, where do I?
No, we've been buying Pfizer, the stock, because number one, the stock's been absolutely demolished over the last year and a half because it's post-COVID and they had a bubble COVID valuation and revenues, and it's all been demolished. Nobody's getting COVID.
Yeah, the pandemic's gone. Damn.
The pandemic's gone. Their treatment for COVID and their vaccine for COVID have dropped 70-80% revenue over the last, from the COVID peak. And the stock's been demolished. So great. Got it. But then you go look at it and you're like, well, it's trading at 10 times earnings, which is relatively cheap, especially in this current stock market. Yeah. It's got a 6% dividend, which is pretty good for a stock. It's very good for a stock compared to cash right now. It's not as good as it was when cash was paying 0%. But more to the point, there's 109 drugs in there in development that they
is that all?
They are the number. That's more than any other pharma company that they've got.
Wow.
They also have a GLP-1 oral drug that the data will be coming out on, and we think that could be good. But to the point of what we're talking about, I think they are probably the single biggest beneficiary of the AI drug revolution because they have factories. That's why BioNTech partnered with them to do the Pfizer drug. I think those nanobots in the chemicals that they're releasing, at least, are probably going to be built at a contract drug manufacturer, of which Pfizer is probably going to do more of that in coming decades. And so as the AI drug revolution accelerates drug discovery and drug getting to market, I shouldn't say drugs, let's call it medications, getting to market, that Pfizer will be one of the biggest, if not the single biggest.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably right. If I were looking, I'd look for if I'm balancing it out with any other drug companies, whatever, which ones are able to kind of manipulate DNA at scale to kind of innovate on protein kind of manufacture, like making the proteins as they're discovered. It's like on the AI side, they've come up with a zillion proteins, and they can start to do things within just the computer, simulate what's going on to go, this is a very likely useful one kind of thing. And then the crossover from simulating that with, computers and AI across to getting physical, like whoever's good at that, they're set.
Pfizer actually had a good example of doing something like that, but with their Paxlovid, the COVID therapeutic. And typically it takes 4 years. So not the actual discovery part of it. They had an idea of what molecules they wanted to use, but then when they optimized it, like finding, what's the right dosage and, or, minimize side effects, all that kind of stuff. They did that in 4 months. And normally that process takes 4 years. Obviously, COVID pandemic helped accelerate that.
I was going to ask that actually.
They used AI and machine learning to do that optimizing part.
Yeah, I think it made it like, I was going to ask about that. I think it made a kind of leap ahead.
Yeah.
As a result of what happened. It's kind of like when, in wartime, in World War II, whatever, and then all of a sudden different technologies were figured out and had to be very rapidly. So they did. And, yeah.
John, do you still play piano?
Sometimes I have one.
That's not a keyboard behind you. That's your computer.
That's just another computer.
Where's your
that's a Raspberry Pi with a.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Very cool. I've been introducing my daughter to the Raspberry Pi concept and how it would work. Do you have a keyboard in your house? Do you still play? Oh, nice. I have one around here somewhere. You know about Raspberry Pi?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did I tell you about it recently?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a really nice digital piano, a Kawai.
Yeah.
That I love.
Maybe next week we will do a musical version of the AI Revolution call.
Well, we could get AI into it by using like Suno or
Sora. Sora. Yeah.
Yeah. I promise any AI version of singing will be better than my own, but it won't be as authentic.
But Udio now lets you sing something, and it will take what you sang and turn it in and go make the music out of that as its input.
Wow.
It's happening.
They're also being sued by Warner Brothers and all the other music labels for ripping off.
You cannot go steal Johnny Cash's voice and put it in an AI song, release it to the internet, and think that's okay.
Next, they're going to sue Spotify, for like not being a 33 LP.
It's funny. I think most people would think I lean libertarian, but I truly want, and I think most libertarians should want laws that are on the books to be enforced. And there are laws against stealing people's likeness, including their voice, that should be enforced.
Yeah. So no one thought of these kind of methods of stealing, as it was, because there was that notion of, fair use. It's like, I'm not like mimicking it back out. I'm using it to train, who's going to shut down every language model for going and taking every book in the world as its way of kind of becoming smart.
If I want to give a guitar lesson on YouTube and I play a riff from a song, there's a good chance that YouTube will not share revenue with me at all because I am using copyrighted.
Oh yeah, and these programs are made to not
just make the whole song using
ripped off sound.
That's not what these things are doing. So they're going and taking they're taking every riff out there and operating a level above that in abstraction and going, oh, riffs in general seem to operate like this. That's what's going on. It's not like it's like taking a recording of it and playing back out all the little riffs.
Yeah, but the sound, the likeness of the voice, I think has crossed the line. I don't think you should be. I would love to be on a jury that has to decide that case, because it'd be fascinating to hear all the discovery and everything. Right?
Yeah, but what are you going to do? Like an AI, you're going to say the likeness of this ChatGPT to what a person might say and respond with is too close, and therefore whatever they did to go obtain it, it's not going to happen.
John, leave you with this. You get the last thought here. In 15, 20 years, will the court systems use AI to help filter out wasted time and bad trials and try to make sure that stuff that actually gets to court has met some sort of AI reasoned out threshold? I never thought of that until we started talking about this right now.
Far sooner. I mean, it may not make all decisions or something, but in terms of just
Can't be
reading things.
Have you met the
categorizing
Republican
things-
Democrat regime? They are not going to be doing that within 5 or 7 years. It will take a
No,
decade.
well, it takes intelligence. So to know.
Yeah,
when
you
to-
apparently, you've met the Republican Democrat regime, and intelligence isn't their strong suit.
Yeah, well, we used to have meetings about this.
The three of us, and others.
and many
Weir.
more.
Yeah, Robert Sainer, shout out.
Yeah.
All right, John D, peace and love. I appreciate your time and energy. Thumbs up. Bryce, thank you.
Yep. Thank you guys.
Bryce Smith, Cody Willard, John D. Oliveira. That's the AI Revolution call. We'll see you next Monday, 3 p.m. Mountain, 5 p.m. Eastern. Yeah,
Catch
I'm
you
going to
next
tell
week.
AI to
All right.
fix the time zone thing.
See you later.
Bye, guys. Thanks, John.